What's up, everybody out there in Codex land? This is Dan, joining you again with another fantastic interview. I got my partner in crime, Uncle Gary, here, and we are interviewing the, I'm going to say, comic superstar, comic legend, comic royalty, Jimmy.
All that.
So I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us tonight.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here.
And let me tell you, just throwing a little interjection. Besides being a comic legend and one of the great creators that is still amongst us, the man is a solid gold, genuine class act. I've interacted with him on quite a, probably 8-10 times, and he has always been solid gold. So he's a guy you want to go see. He's a guy that's worth standing in line to meet and greet and tell him how much you really appreciate his work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I like to give what I get. So people come to me with a smile. I usually get it right back. And, we're in this together. We all love this hobby. So it's kind of fun. It's always fun to talk to people that have like minds,
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And you and I are of the same generation. So, there's a, we have a lot of shared experiences.
Yes.
Dan's a young boy over there, he was born when we were in high school. So
I'm going to teach you some stuff, Dan. By the end of this, you're going to be learned.
Well, speaking of high school, I saw that when you went to high school, that you went to the High School of Art and Design in New York. So, going to that, was your plan always to be a comic artist, or did you have other artistic plans?
I when I was a kid, I would copy the comics. I would draw it, and I didn't set out to go to High School of Art and Design. I actually went to a local school in Brooklyn called Midwood, and at one point, one of the days it was ninth grade, and I was like probably the third or fourth month I was there, and they called me down to the principal's office, and they gave me 2 subway tokens and $5, and they told me to get on the train and go into Manhattan to take a test for an art school, because one of the teachers there called my parents ahead of time and said, "Look, we're going to send him to the city. We think he's wasting his talent being in the school." And so I went into the New York, and they gave me a pencil and paper, and I took a test. And the test was basically, in 15, 20 minutes, draw people at a bus stop. And they gave me a blank piece of paper, and I did that. And then they said, do this, do that, do that. And then they sent me home. And I didn't think I was going to get in, because my brother tried to get into that school before me, and he couldn't get in. So, my brother's very talented, my older brother. But I made it, and the next year I went to the High School of Art and Design, and I did. I took comic art and illustration. I figured I want to draw, and they had all the regular subjects, but I did have 3 or 4 art classes a day as well. And it was a great school, and I made friends with Mark Texera, who you guys know.
Oh, yeah.
Writer and Punisher, and Dennis Cowan was in my school. Joe Jesko was the year before me.
Oh boy,
wow,
another great guy. But it was a different life for me, because if you ever saw the movie Saturday Night Fever, I literally grew up in that Brooklyn, and this forced me to get on a train every morning at 6:00 in the morning and to go to Manhattan. Take a train. It was an hour and a half total to Manhattan to go to school. So it actually changed my brain. It changed the way I looked at everything in the world. It wasn't just Brooklyn people. It was now people from everywhere and every nationality. And then going to school in New York during the 70s was a pretty special thing. It was a crime and porn capital. And and also Dan and I have that in common. It was a punk rock rock music scene and the whole thing. It was a great time to be alive, because it felt dangerous, and it was dangerous, but there was a certain beauty to that city and its trashiness that it'll never get back again.
Dude, from that era, the movie The Warriors to me was like, that's freaking New York,
Yeah.
And I just loved that.
Dan and Gary, imagine watching The Warriors in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Like I did in the movie theater, where it's about the Brooklyn gang. Everybody. The theater I was in was going insane.
Wow.
Movie.
I mean, and that was a midnight movie staple for years too. So not only I had a girlfriend that insisted on seeing that every weekend. Everybody else was in line to see Rocky Horror, and we would see The Warriors every freaking weekend. And I remember the baseball Furies were the ones that I always thought, now that's badass.
Yeah.
That is a badass look. Yeah.
I always thought if the baseball Furies are the ones that are going to show the bruises the best, because the red stains would be all over those white uniforms.
Absolutely, absolutely. What a great time though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and now Times Square and all that's all sanitized. But back when you were there, man, it was gritty, and
It was
different.
I saw all my first Bruce Lee movies there, and I saw all my first horror movies, because they had a thing. It was $1. It was $1.50 or $1.99. You get to see 3 horror films. It was always like Basket Case, Return of the Night of the Living Dead, and some other newer one,
Right.
like The Omen or something like that. And then it was porno shops. It was porn everywhere, and peep shows, and like I said, I get that they wanted to clean up the city and all that stuff. But there was this certain thing about New York. Like I said, when I was younger, I was maybe 16, 17. It felt so dangerous, and it was exciting at the same thing with the clubs. We go down to CB's, or we go down to Max Kansas City, or any of those clubs, and it was always new music playing, and it was always it was just like there was always some bottle getting thrown and some fight happening outside. But I never felt truly in danger. I just felt like this is what it's like to be an adult.
Well,
you get
and
to
you were
go
young.
and do
You were
anything
young
you
and
want.
invincible. You were young and invincible then too.
It's true. There were many a nights we were running for our lives. Don't get me wrong. All right, there were many nights, but it also kind of it taught for growing up a city boy. I my peripheral vision is insane. I can see almost behind me, because it's just, it was a different world and a different life, and then throw comics into it. I was around when Bernie Wrightson was doing a signing at a local
I worship at the altar of Bernie Wrightson, brother.
Yeah, Bernie.
Yeah.
And then Barry Smith would come into New York for a con, and I would see Jim Lee. I would see Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I went to a comic show in the city, and Jack Kirby was there. And then I met Stan a couple of times, and George Perez, I met him in a local motel. He did a convention in a small motel in Brooklyn. He was telling me all about this book, Logan's Run, he was drawing.
Yeah.
And, it was a very special time. And again, I think my first, where I sat down with somebody who was trying to show me how to use a brush and a pen, and that was Bernie Wrightson. I saw him. He did a show at a comic art gallery in New York, and I asked him about his pens and brushes, and he had them there, and he showed me how to use them, and then he wrote down what brushes for me to buy. Wow. And I felt like the angel of comics came down and touched me, and I now knew what Bernie Wrightson was using, so I could do anything now. Of course, I needed to have another 30 years worth of experience to get anywhere near it.
Well, and even then, he is at an exalted level. That's for sure.
No.
When Russ Braun, told me, and actually told us for CODEX too, a great story where I think he had a family friend that knew Joe Orlando.
Yeah.
And so because of that, he got to show Joe Orlando his stuff, and Orlando was really tough. And he, he'd tell kids, "How did you get here? Did you get here? Did you drive a car? Did you put gas in it? Because that's what you ought to do for a living." I mean, he was, he was rough, but he really liked what he saw of Braun's work, and he says, "Well, let me show you something." He goes in a back room and brings out a bunch of Bernie Wrightson original work and laid it in front of him. And Russ Braun said he was going from feeling so good that he's liking his stuff, and then he puts down something in front of him that he would never have any hope of ever achieving. And he just went, the air went out of his balloon. And he said he spent the whole damn summer trying to draw like Bernie. And then he realized nobody can draw like Bernie. And he was going to be his best self. So, but you're right. You had the angel working with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, and what people don't understand about artists like Bernie or Kaluta or Barry, or they don't understand that you can't copy their work, because they draw people weirdly. Like, they draw them weird, and it's unique to their style. Like Jack Kirby, he draws people, they look like Kirby people. When somebody else does it, it doesn't look right. And the core of that is that you have to learn how to draw everything. And you have to learn how to draw people perfectly. And only then can your own style sneak into there where all of a sudden that's the way you draw people. Amanda, my wife, Amanda, draws people a certain way. You can
Yep.
tell Amanda. Darwin Cook, when he drew people, you could tell that's Darwin Cook.
Mhm.
It's not a thing you copy. You can be
No.
inspired. Everybody's inspired by people. But the artists that stand out to us are the ones that had their individual style. I'm looking, you can tell a Will Eisner page a million miles away.
Yep.
You can tell Jack Davis from
Yes.
a million miles away. These are the guys that stay with us. These are the cornerstones of what we do. And you can't do them. You have to merge into your own style, otherwise you're doomed. And but it is good to get recommendations from them for brushes and pens.
Well, no, I agree. And you know what? It's like a great vocalist. You hear that voice, and that's only one person. You know who that is.
Mhm.
There's nobody else that sounds like him. But it's the same, same thing. I'm pretty good. I mean, look, I'm sitting on a mountain here of 59,000 comics. I've got quite a collection. But I can look. I know a Grill immediately. I know Neil Adams immediately. A Bernie Wrightson, a Nick Carty, who never gets enough love.
Yeah,
Jim
no,
Aparo,
yeah.
these greats. Of course Kirby, but and even lesser known guys that people should know. Luis Dominguez,
Yep.
who was fantastic. But you see them and their style and you can pick them out. And one thing we try to do at CODEX here a lot is we try to highlight a lot of these great creators of the past. And because it's important, because sure, the new artists out there now, the hot flavors, they are great, but I never want to forget the people that built this industry, that laid this wonderful foundation for what we're doing. And of course, you're one of those people that have laid that foundation. Your work alone, as a great anchor, and your storytelling ability has just been magnificent. So to hear who you're inspired by is something I always love to hear, who these people that I consider greats in the field, who inspired them. So
Yeah, it's it's a never-ending list of people, and I still feel I haven't done my best work yet. Like I'm working hard towards it, I'm trying to challenge myself all the time. That's it's tough because you keep seeing new people crop up and they look amazing. It's funny because I have conversations with someone and I said, your work's amazing. Now you have to work on your storytelling. Or
Yeah.
now you have to, push the camera in a little bit more. Don't be afraid to draw the faces so much, and don't be afraid to be less lazy with stuff. Get more designy and stuff like that. And it's really interesting because storytelling is the key. All these great guys knew
Yep.
how to tell stories, and there's a lot of people that can draw beautiful comic covers, but
Yes.
the minute you put them on the inside of a comic, they fall apart.
I've said that for years. I've said that for years. The hard work is doing the interior of the book, telling a story, and making those characters look the same way consistently through the whole damn book. So
Yeah.
you're right. Doing the cover, I mean, these are amazing artists, but man, the people that do the interiors, they're the heroes, and they're the true workmen and craftsmen of the industry.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask too that you started out in the early '90s. You started with Marvel. Inking a ton of stuff. How was it that you got that gig with them to start out?
Yeah, that was a favor from a high school buddy named Mark Texera, and I was looking to break in Marvel and ran into Mark, and Mark's was at the time he was drawing both the Punisher and the Ghost Rider books,
Nice.
2 books a month. Think
Wow.
about that, right? And I saw him, and he goes, dude, I need your help so bad.
Wow.
And I said, look, I'll help you, but we have to work up in the bullpen at Marvel. I want to work in the Marvel office. So we would meet. I would finish my job at 5:00. I had a job in advertising. It was only 3 blocks away from Marvel, too. I would go up and meet Mark, and I would sit down at the desk, and we'd be there all night. We would work because they had a side door that had 24 hours with a security guard. So they would let us work in the bullpen, and we would literally live on a box of chocolate donuts and a 64-ounce Coke, and we would nail a book in like 2 nights, 2 or 3
Wow.
nights. And Mark would hand me a page and say, "All right, I need I sort of fudged in. I need the motorcycle, and I need a building here, and then if you can ink that jacket for me and send it back to me," and then he would work on it, and we did these books for a couple of months, Punisher books, Ghost Rider, whatever Mark had. while he was doing that, I was doing samples, inking samples and drawing samples. And I would get there a little early. I'd get there 4:30, and the editors would be in the rooms, and I would drop off Xeroxes of my latest work to each of them. I wouldn't bother them. I'd go, hey, Don Daly, nice to see you. Hey, Bobby Chase, hi. Here's my latest samples. If you need anything or you're in a spot, just call me. And eventually, because I was up there all the time, an editor would come by and go, hey, do you have any time? I need like 2 pages done overnight. Can you do it? And I'm like, sure, give it to me. I would literally caffeine Mountain Dew myself up, and I would ink these pages, and I would be there at Marvel in the morning with the page given to the editor, and it's like, oh, damn, man, thank you so much. And I said, all right, if you have anything else, let me know. I did that to every office, right? And eventually I would walk up there, and the editors would come out of the offices and say, hey, Jimmy, I got this book. Can you get this done in like a week? I remember I had this. It was like a 48-page. It was called Nightcat. Worst comic. It was terrible.
I've got Nightcat. Yeah.
Okay. Dennis Cowan did breakdowns on it, and it was 48 pages. And Bob Budiansky came out of his office, and he goes, Jimmy, come here. He goes, how would you like to ink 48 pages of a book? And I'm like, yeah, I would kill this. What is it? And he goes, it's called Nightcat. Don't worry what it is. Just do the best you can on it. It's breakdown, so you're going to have to do finishes, which just meant Dennis sketched it. And he says, I need it in 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, I'll nail it. I took the book, 48 pages. I think it was 48 pages.
Yeah.
I took it on the train, on the subway, and I slipped them out of the envelope, and I started flipping through them. And like my blood pressure, I was like, how am I going to do this?
Wow.
How am I going to get 48? Look, this isn't even fully drawn. It's like kind of sketched it. And man, I had a steady diet of takeout and Mountain Dew, and I sat in my apartment and worked on it, and I brought it in a 2-week mark. It was a Friday, and I brought it in, and I dropped it all in Bob Budiansky's hands, and he flipped through it. He goes, looks great, sign his voucher. And I'm like, got anything else? And he goes, I might have something for you next Monday. Come in Monday.
Wow.
And that's eventually, like, every time I went up there, I would pick up a little bit more here, a little bit more there. And then I had the thing, a switch went off where artists were asking me to ink them.
Nice.
And once that happened, then I got steady work, because all of a sudden I had Don Daly come and say, hey, this guy asked, or you, Haynes, asked me for you, and J.H. Williams wants you to ink this, or something looks like that. So I started coming in, I started getting work, and I took my advertising background into this workplace, meaning I didn't linger in the office. I was early or on time with my deadlines. I was professional. I would bring everything in a nice envelope, and I would have it in page order. I was so professional. And then when I was done, I would leave the room and I say, hey, if you have any more, think of me. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I was working the room the whole time, where the editors, when they saw me, they looked at me as a guy that would help or save their book or make their job easier. If I give it to Jimmy, I'll get it done. So the trick to making you want to make the editor's job less stressful. And then Stan Lee. One time I was up there, and Stan Lee was up on the 10th floor, and I'm walking to my desk, and Stan's walking towards me. That's the first time, like, professional wise, right? Because I've seen him as a fan in the cons. And he's walking towards me, and he's like, he stops in front of me, and he goes, Jimmy Palmiotti, how are you? Just like that. And I was like, hey, Stan, how you doing? He's like, good. He goes, I hear you doing some good work up here and this and that. He goes, yeah, I'm trying. He goes, yeah, the editors are telling me you're getting the books in and you have a good future in front of you. I just want to tell you, we really appreciate the hard work you're doing. I was like, thank you. And, I was like, I grew a pair of wings. I was a foot off the ground. I was so excited that Stan Lee.
Jimmy, that's a top-notch Stan impression.
Oh, thanks. I can do Stan pretty easily, actually. But and he turned to me and he turned around. We passed each other. He turned around. And he goes, Jimmy, you know how I knew you were Jimmy Palmiotti? And I'm like, no. And he goes, and he pulls this little photo out of Wizard magazine that had a picture of me. And he goes, I found this photo in Wizard magazine, and they told me you were going to be up here. So I wanted to make sure I was ready in case I saw you.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit, Stan Lee just Yeah. So I knew after that I started getting steady work, and then that's pretty much my career, how I started at the Marvel.
Were you credited on a lot of these jobs you did? Like, are you credited on Nightcat?
Yes, I am,
Okay.
unfortunately, and
Well,
I,
listen. That book did a lot for you, though. That book,
well,
that was a
it
trial
got
by
me.
fire, a
It
baptism
got
by
me in the
fire.
door, and
Yeah.
it actually Dennis Cowan actually liked what I did on it, which was shocking. Because I look at it now, I still have pages from it because I don't think I've ever sold a page because who would want it? But
People would want it.
Yeah.
I look at it and I go, oh my God, what a mess. But the editor was happy, the publisher was happy, everybody was happy. Dennis was happy because Dennis, a couple
Yeah.
years later, launched Milestone and let me ink all the #1 covers over him, and I did hardware.
Well,
with him. So
you know what Neil Adams' first professional work was? His first paid job was?
I want to say a newspaper strip, but I'm probably wrong.
Well, maybe that was professional, but in the comic business, he did a page of an Archie joke book, and he did a page of art. And I remember going past and I had the book. My buddy that sets up had that book. He goes, "That's Neil's first professional work." And so Neil, always the entrepreneur. I said, "Neil, will you claim this?" He goes, "Yeah, I'll claim it. You come over here and I'll sign it for you, and you charge twice as much."
Yeah.
So Neil was claiming everything that was his baby. But the other thing that's impressive there is when artists were asking for you, right?
Yeah.
Because they're asking for you because you made them look good. I know Mike Grill hated when Vince Coletta did his work. Hated it. And
I think most people did not like what Vince did. Vince was capable of better work, but he decided not to do it.
Yes.
He actually would erase backgrounds that he didn't want to draw.
Yeah, but to be an inker that people wanted, that's because you're enhancing their work, and that's awesome.
What the other thing I would do, and again, my advertising background, I would get the phone number of the artist I was working on, and I would call them and introduce myself and say, "Hey, look, is there anything you want me to pay particular attention to when I'm inking it? Like, is there stuff you prefer, or do you like more of a Bernie Wrights, or like a heavier darks, or will you like the darks open?" So I would have a conversation with them and get to know them, and that was more than most people were doing, I think, back then. But that's what I was taught in advertising. I was taught you talk to the people you're working with and communicate and see what they want. And I took that lesson into the business end. And I've always had that half business brain going on. But I truly loved what I was doing, and I was trying to impress the artists all the time. So I had that going, and I tried to give a little extra. I remember I used to steal the Zipatone all the time from Marvel because. I remember seeing Tom Palmer up there. I used to run into Tom Palmer, and who was one of the better inkers. Let's be honest, he was one of the best.
Absolutely.
And Tom would use Zip all the time, and I thought that was the coolest thing. So I would try to do that with a lot of the artists. I would try to use Zip, and I would try to use some of the stuff I learned from Al Williamson, and I was never as good as those guys, right? But I had my own look. And certain books I'm very proud of. Certain books I understand. I look back on and I go, I remember that. I had to do that. I had to ink Mark Bagley overnight, a couple of pages overnight. I only had like 4 or 5 hours to do it.
Wow.
And, I looked at it and like, yeah, it's okay. But it happens because, again, when the artist is late and they need the book the next day. I remember when X-Force 1 was up at Marvel, right? Rob Liefeld drew it.
Yeah.
And they gave it to the bullpen, and they said, anybody who wants to, we need some help just sharpening up some stuff on it, because it had to go to the printer. And it was like that kind of thing I was getting when I first started. I was getting like helping out with a panel. Like somebody would go, I need you to redraw this panel. Can you redraw this? I'm like, yeah, I could draw that. Because I was also penciling too, right? So I was like, they gave me I did a couple of ghostwriter stories in Marvel Comics Presents. I did a Namor issue, but I got ink work, penciling work. I wasn't getting too much of. I was told I was too photogenic. It was too much like realistic looking.
It's too good.
No, they said it looked like a photo, and they didn't want that. They wanted more comic book. Yeah, I understood what they were saying.
That seems to work well for Alex Ross to look like a damn picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, if they just kept me penciling and doing that, I would have been a different career for me,
Yeah.
But because the inking took off, and then eventually I met Joe Casada, and did Event Comics, and we started publishing. So it was a progression. I had my career was a giant progression from one thing to the other.
Do you consider yourself, if you were gonna, do you consider yourself more of a writer or more of an inker or artist?
I say creator because it covers everything, but
Covers everything.
I would say early version of me 1.0 is inker, and a later version of me is a writer / everything else, because I do color the books now too. So I color my own books, and I do a little bit of everything. The only thing I suck at is lettering. I just don't have the hand for it. My wife is so great at lettering. She's so great, and I suck at it.
Well, yeah, that is tough. Was it? I think it was Jim Aparo for Brave and the Bold would draw it, pencil it, he would ink it, and he would letter it. And It was just a one-man show, and that was his book. He was going to do that book, and he was as right as rain. It was always on time. Always that. But I mean,
he was amazing. I mean, Jim Aparo. I mean, his before Darwin Cook passed, me and Darwin pitched a Spectre series of one shots, and
man,
DC wasn't interested. They weren't interested. We want to do Jim Corrigan one shots, and with me and Darwin writing it and Darwin drawing it, and they didn't bite. They were like, we're not interested in that right now.
Oh,
so
man, that's too bad.
I grew up on that Spectre, that Adventure Comics run, those 10 issues.
What is the other one? It was the black. The other backup was the
Black Orchid.
Black Orchid by Tony. Was it? No, it wasn't. It was Tony DeZunia, right? Gray Morrow and then
yes.
Tony.
Yeah, because that was before the Spectre run. They had the Black Orchid in there.
Those books were beautiful.
Aparo's work on that was amazing. Gee, and Fleischer wrote those.
And Fleischer was, of course, right? Because I'm a Jonah Hex guy.
Yep.
Fleischer was amazing. I mean, the guy, there wasn't anything he couldn't do.
And the Spectre is such a great character, and I know we've talked about it on the stage before. The Ostrander Mandrake run was phenomenal.
It was great, we loved it. Darwin and I had a different take. We wanted to do it like a real crime book, And of course, Darwin wanting to do crime made sense, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, it did. Absolutely, that would have been a great book.
It would have been. I think we pitched it to them, and they were like, "Well, Jim Corrigan, he's now a different character." And I'm like, "No, this is out of continuity." I said, "Let us do it out of continuity. We don't care about what's going on in the books. Let us do it, on a separate. We just want to do all these one shots in a row, and they didn't bite. It's a shame, but
it's DC seems to have a history of turning down Spectre books by good creative teams.
Yeah, Tomasi was going to relaunch that with Kyle Hotz. They did two issues of Detective that were phenomenal, right. And I was so jacked. And he was Tomasi was crestfallen that they just didn't bite on that. What a great book that would have been too.
Yeah. I mean, Darwin was trying to. When he did New Frontier, it was about going back to the basics of the characters, but he was also trying to give them a blueprint of how they should be doing their comics. And Darwin did a month of Darwin Cook covers. You remember that month?
Oh, I have every damn issue. Yep, okay. They were fantastic.
So he was doing them when he was here because he lived down the street from me,
Oh.
And he said, I'm giving them a gift. This is how all their books should look. He says, this is the time frame. He says, just look at these covers. That's how those books should look. And he goes, and they'll be the top selling comic company the next day. He goes, because people want those basic characters. They just don't want to, Darwin had he had a style to his stuff.
Yes, he did.
Universal. It was universal. His storytelling translated to every language.
And it was timeless. It was timeless too.
Yes, it was timeless. We don't have a lot of timeless guys anymore.
Yep.
I don't even know who now picked that up after Darwin.
You know what? I'd have to think long and hard on that too, brother, because you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say all these. I mean, you work with some great creators in your time. One of you mentioned was Joe Quesada. You guys worked on so many projects together for so many years. How was it that the two of you met and decided, like, hey, we click enough that we're going to work together like we're going to be a pretty good team together, and then decide, hey, let's go launch our own company in Event Comics?
Well, so Joe and I worked together. We did a lot of coverage together in the beginning, but our first comic wasn't until Exo Zero.
Yeah.
Valiant. That was our first comic. We actually did the whole comic together, which people thought we worked together for years before that, but we didn't. And Exo sold 2 million plus, whatever. It sold some crazy numbers because it had that aluminum foil cover
Yeah,
on it.
I got that one up there.
Yeah. But we met in San Diego. We were online to get some food. We were talking. He was from Queens. I was from Brooklyn. We just got along, and we were both in the part of our careers where we wanted to get recognized for something and do something together. And Exo was the first thing that came up, and then we did Ninjak after that. And then we formed Event Comics and created Ash and Painkiller Jane and 22 Brides and all that. But he was a guy we hung out with, we got along, and we just decided to work together. We both were story guys, so we wrote the stuff we did, and I inked them. I inked Joe differently than he's inked later after me, because after me everybody's very thin line and very graphic. I inked Joe like it was 3D. It was like big and powerful, and I went full brush on him, which I don't think people do really with his work. So it had a different look, it had a different kind of dynamics going on. Like if you look at Daredevil, we did together, it looks like nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
But we clicked, and then we did some self-publishing, and then Marvel grabbed us for Marvel Nights, and the rest is history. We've been working since. But I've had a lot of partners in my career. I like working with other people. Justin Gray, I wrote with for years. We did Jonah Hex. We did so many books together. And my wife now, Amanda, and I work on everything together. And I just feel like comics themselves are a little antisocial because you kind of by yourself. And I do like working with a group or other people. I do enjoy that part of it. So I always kind of have a partner.
Well, those two characters you mentioned for Event, like the two big ones were Ash and Painkiller Jane, because I remember when they came out, like, especially Ash was a big thing.
Sure.
Ash was a firefighter. Painkiller Jane was a police officer. Was it a conscious decision that you were going to make these two characters like both first responders, or did it just kind of turn out that way?
We modeled them after people we knew. So Bobby Gallowitz was a firefighter that was a friend of mine, my best friend's dad. And he would tell me stories about being a firefighter in the Bronx. And we're talking about crazy stories. And so the inspiration came from Bobby. As a matter of fact, he's a character in the comic.
Nice.
So are the other guys from the firehouse. Some of the other guys are actually real people. Bobby passed away a couple of years ago. And the firemen did a tribute to his life, and they had the Ash comics at the tribute.
Nice.
Which was kind of cool. And then Painkiller Jane was we wanted to do something very grounded. We thought a female cop in New York would be a pretty cool character. Jane was sort of like a mix of a lot of people we both knew. And a lot of Joe and I both had very strong women in our lives. My mom, one of the main ones, and his mom. And we modeled her after people that we knew. And she was a character of strength. I will say over the years, Amanda says Painkiller Jane is me as a female cop. Because Jane's all attitude. She's all like, fuck you and fuck everybody else and everything. That's the Jane character is. I still write a book or two of Jane a year because I love doing that character, writing that character. But these were two. We just because there was the girl craze. We had Lady Death. We had all these different female characters coming out when we did Event, and I wanted to do one with like a B cup or a C cup. I didn't want to have like the huge press, but I wanted to do a New York attitude kind of female character. And Ash was just honestly, Joe and I were in Chicago, split in a room for Chicago Con. And I remember I was taking a shower and I came out and I said, has there ever been like a fireman as a superhero? And we were like looking like, I'm like, I don't know. We were calling up somebody because it was before computers, right? We couldn't. And I'm like, I don't think so. And then we started coming up with an idea. And then my younger brother, Pete, said to me, he goes, "Why don't you name him Ash? It's only 3 letters." Like, and I was like, I bought Pete a brand new TV for that one, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah,
I mean,
Um,
that was a great suggestion for it. That
it
was
was.
a cool name for him too. I mean, that was a cool book when it came out. And
Yeah.
Brave,
What
Brave and the Bold #1 character, Fireman Farrell, but he wasn't a superhero, but he was just
right. I remember. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember that. But
Yeah.
you know, when we sold the rights to Ash to DreamWorks, and they now own the film and TV rights forever.
oh,
This was about 2 kids that got flown out and put in the Chateau Marmont and got to go to DreamWorks and meet the people there and got to walk through the city. And the contract we signed, our lawyer probably should have never let us sign it. Granted, we did very well with it, but once they bought that character, the incentive to keep doing it was kind of drained out of us because they never made it. They still own it. They literally can make an Ash movie right now. But Painkiller Jane, obviously, we sold the rights, and there was a TV movie, then there was a TV show, and then I sold it recently, not a couple of years back, to Jessica Chastain. Now it's back with me. Jane has this life that she's not going away, and it makes sense to the character that you can't kill her. But we hit it was a certain time in comics when everything was pretty exciting. Image guys were there. Wizard magazine was the top thing.
Yeah.
And we were like the kids of Wizard, me and Joe. We were in every issue, you know.
yeah, I remember you guys were big in that. That's one of the questions I wanted to ask about Ash too, because like I said, I really dug that book when it was coming out. You did the first series, and then you did the mini series, The Fire Within.
Yeah.
But you only released 2 of the 3 issues, and did another mini series, and then
With Umberto, yeah.
Yeah, and then you said you were going to do the ongoing, and it never came about. So,
Yeah.
what was the reason that you didn't release the last issue of that, and then that the regular series didn't start? Was it because of the DreamWorks thing?
I think the Fire Within. I think both James Robinson and Joe never got it together to finish that book. And when we were doing, I was working on the Humberto Ramos one, which came out, and then we did an Ash 22 Brides kind of thing, Painkiller Jane Ash thing. But what happened was we got plucked out from Marvel Knights while we were still working on stuff. Because remember, we did an Ash Azrael book for DC.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And that came out, and we did a Painkiller Jane, Painkiller Jane Hellboy, Painkiller Jane Vampirella, Painkiller Jane Darkchild, and Painkiller Jane Darkness crossovers.
And there was the Punisher one too, right? Or was that
The
later?
Punisher, and I worked on every one of them.
Yeah.
And then the Marvel Knights deal came, and we were going to continue doing stuff, but the Marvel Knights thing turned into a monster for us, and it took up all our time. So, and then when I left Marvel Knights, Joe and I did our separate thing. We're like, okay, we worked together for a long time. Now we need to do our own shit. And I wanted to write, and he wanted to be editor in chief. So,
Well, I want because the Marvel Knights was such a big deal. When it came out, I know Marvel was having some like financial issues at the time.
they were in chapter 11. They were in chapter 11. Yeah, when we started.
So what was it like? How did it come about that you and Joe got chosen to do the Marvel Knights, and like, hey, make this separate imprint, and like, did you pick the characters that were in it, or did they tell you these are the characters we want you to do, or like, how did that whole thing come about?
It started with they were in chapter 11 and they were in trouble, and they needed to try new things because books were getting canceled. When we were there, they were canceling Daredevil and the Punisher, by the way. So those books were going to get canceled. And what happened was Gareb Shamus was friends with Joe Calamari, who was the editor, who was the publisher of Marvel at the time. And he suggested that Joe talk to us and maybe offer us some books to see what we can do. And we went up and met with Joe Calamari. And by the time we're done with the meeting, it was, hey, you guys can pick 4 books. And we told them we want the penthouse to Marvel Comics. There was a penthouse that had advertising guys up in it. And they booted all the advertising guys out, and they gave us the penthouse to work out of.
Nice.
And
That's awesome.
and then they said, what characters do you want? And they said, by the way, you can't do any X-Men characters. You can't have this. You can't have that. You can't have that. And we came in and said, well, we definitely want Daredevil because we knew Kevin Smith wanted to write Daredevil. So we grabbed Daredevil. And they were happy because they said Daredevil's getting canceled, so you can have it. And then we said we want Punisher, and they're like, you can have the Punisher. That's canceled too. And then because we're both Fantastic Four and Kirby fans, we picked Black Panther and the Inhumans because we thought nobody's doing them anymore, and we wanted to ground the characters like in a reality. So the Marvel Knights books were basically about grounding the characters in New York, making New York a character in the books.
Yep.
And then Inhumans, we wanted to do like a royalty type thing with the Inhumans. And that's what our Inhuman series was about. Pretty much Black Bolt is like leads this kingdom kind of thing. Very Game of Thrones, by the way, before Game of Thrones, with the Inhumans. And so that was the pitch we did. And they gave us the 4 books and they said, okay, but if they sell less than this, you're in trouble. If they don't come out in time, you're in trouble. Blah, 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 blah. So we decided we're going to work in the office, above the office of Marvel. We're going to work in the building. And that kept us on time and getting the books out. And I guarantee nobody thought it was going to be as big as it was. But we had Kevin Smith going on TV talking up Daredevil. Joe and I were doing the morning shows in New York. We were doing CBS, NBC morning shows, which, remember, no internet back then, right? So we were doing TV press. We were doing newspaper press. And then we decided we're not only going to put a brand on the comics, but we're going to launch all 4, one each week for a month. We're going to launch them each week. So the comic stores were really happy because, all right, each week we got a new title coming from Marvel Knights. And then it was monthly after that. So we worked with a lot of the retailers saying, what's the best way to present this book? And my advertising background and Joe's background helped in launching this because we launched it. Like it felt like a monster when it came out. We drove up to Rockland County and met with the Wizard guys and said, okay, here's what we're doing. We need you guys to promote it the month we do it. And then the rest is, I guess, comic book history. It did really well.
Yeah, it did. That was like the Daredevil, the Black Panther, Punisher, all these characters, like all this stuff that's come afterwards, especially the media stuff, like you could trace a lot of it back to that. And then getting Kevin Smith, what was it like working with him on Daredevil? Because, he was the movie guy. Like, I know he'd written a couple comics before, but like they were all based on his movie characters. Like, he was first time, like, here's a monthly book on a superhero to do.
Getting Kevin to work for us was Kevin returning a favor because we helped him with a couple of his movies. I think so much so Joe and I went Chasing Amy for 1 second, but we helped him with a couple of the movies and he owed us a favor. And the favor was to write Daredevil with us. And he was great. I mean, the only thing was we had to edit a lot of his dialogue because he wrote too much. And it would have been panels of Daredevil, like there was no room for the drawing. So we had to edit Kevin down a little bit, which is fine. He understood. But it was an exciting time, and comics really needed a boost at that time. Remember, the only superhero movie out was Blade. There was none of these movies out yet. And when we took over, all of a sudden the movies guys started calling, and I can't tell you, we met with people. I met Wesley Snipes, and I met all these guys because John Singleton was a good friend of mine. And so every time I would go to John's premieres, the actors would come up to me, hey, can you get me I want to do like this character in this movie. And I remember Wesley Snipes taking me outside and talking to me, telling me, no, I am Black Panther. You want me to be Black Panther?
I heard that conversation. He was really wanting that.
Yeah, and I was like, how surreal is this? And Amanda and I were at parties with all these celebrities, and I kept telling everybody, I don't control the movie part, but I will let them know that you're interested, and they will give you a call. And that's what basically our position was at the time, because that was Avi's job. Obviously Avi didn't want us near that stuff. So, but we had all the contacts. So it was an interesting time for me and Joe. We were dumb enough to think we're going to show everybody we can make comics better than they make them.
Well, y'all did a hell of a job. So
that was our goal. It's the arrogance of youth. We're going to go in and we're going to show you guys how to make comics. We're going to show you how to advertise them. We're going to show you how to push creators.
Well, the lasting impact of that is when you watch the Netflix Daredevil or the Netflix Punisher, that is a direct descendant of Marvel.
I do resent those two shows because they didn't even give me a thank you in the credits.
And that stinks. That does stink because
it's pretty shitty.
Yeah, because
that's the new Daredevil show.
What's that?
I said maybe they will in the new Daredevil show.
Maybe they will. I mean, lately they've been doing a good job with it. You know, Black Panther 2, they gave me a credit, but the first Black Panther, not even a thank you in it.
Wow.
And other people, Joe, and all the other people were, and I was like, what happened here?
Yeah.
I actually worked on that book, you know, but it definitely, you know, we it was the right guys at the right time, and the comic industry needed a boost. It really needed you. Gary, you remember because you had a store, I think, back then, right? Or
Well, yeah, well, I was a big customer at the store. I wasn't a part
Oh,
owner then, but I
okay.
was still heavily involved. And it was we did need a boost. And the fact that you all went to the store owners to say, hey, you know, we want to promote this, that's unheard of today. The publishers don't go to the comic stores and they have little or no regard for them now, and that's such a
big
damn
mistake.
shame.
That's
Yep.
a big mistake they're making right now.
Oh, absolutely. Who's pushing your books? We're pushing the books.
They don't understand. You know, it's funny because and I think you guys know this. My office is in a comic shop called Emerald City Comics in Clearwater, Florida. Very big store. Neil Johnson runs the store. It's a great place. It's a great place. I'm very in touch because my office is in the store. I see what people are buying every week. I see,
Yep.
and I see every time they relaunch another book how much of the audience they're losing on the book. We've been watching a couple of titles because there were titles I've done in the past, and I've been watching them go sink. And it's so easy to fix this problem, but there's so many egos and so many things, and I'm just like, you know, I'm watching DC and Marvel do the same mistakes over and over, and they keep losing core audience, and they don't understand that it's great to appeal to younger audiences, but you have to make sure the guys that have been and girls that have been backing you for years, there's something for them too. You can't just turn your back on them because they're the money people.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite character is Captain America, and I look at a marquee character like that, you know, something like the Avenger, especially the Fantastic Four, like that launched the comic age as we know it. You know, this is a marquee book. This isn't something that you should cancel and restart every 2 or 3 years so you can get that flashy new #1. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a book with a high number and then just putting something on the cover, like, you know, because they used to do it like new creative team, new jumping on point, like to let readers know, hey, you can jump on and start reading it now without having to have all that. But the constant relaunching, it's not good.
Here's what I see. I see a lot of ageism going on where younger people going, well, these guys are old and everything. And I'm just like, no, you don't understand. It's like, these are the guys who've been doing it for years. They bring experience to the table.
Yep.
Don't dismiss them. But they can work with new creators easily. Mix them up, mix it all up, man. But I got to tell you, we lost track of the ongoing teams, the writers or the artists that stay on for more than 10 issues. They're gone. The big two, and why are they gone? Because the big two and the big three, or however you want to look at it, they forgot to take care of their talent. They forgot that to reward the people that are staying on for 30 issues, to say, you know what, we're going to pick up your medical coverage, or we're going to give you a 401k so you have some security. You know, they've forgotten to reward the people. So what's the incentive to the creator to stay on the book past the first 3 issues? There is none. And take it from a guy who's done 100 and something Harleys, who's done 115 Jonah Hexes, believe me, when I stay on a book for a long time, it makes its mark, and forever I'm known for that character. Amanda and I will always be known for Harley.
Well, without a doubt, and to me, you're always known for Jonah Hex.
Right, and Jonah Hex, right.
We had a show a couple of weeks ago, our Comic Character of the Week show, and we did Jonah Hex. And I'll have you know that, you know, one thing we do, we pick our best covers, we pick our best storylines, and you pick how the character works. And brother, you know, my must reads were Jonah Hex, No Way Back, Two Gun Mojo, and the 6 Gun War. So these are some classic stuff. But you and Justin Gray were, you know, we also picked best writer and best artist. It didn't have to be a team, but they just never worked on it. And you and Justin Gray were my pick, and a couple of the other fellows too, because of what you added to that title. And I do just want to show you this. One of my cherished possessions. This is Jonah Hex, No Way Back. A few years, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now at Awesome Con, you and Amanda were signing. Or no, I'm sorry, this was the Baltimore show. End of a weekend where you all, there were Harleys all out the door for you all weekend. But I caught you on a Sunday evening at the end, and you looked so thrilled to get a book that did not have Harley on it. I know you love her, but you did this. And then I asked you if you could personalize it. And I always tell people, my pro tip is ask the creator to personalize it, because then they know you're not flipping it. You're not trying to make a buck on it, and it's going to be something for you. And this is the kind of thing that may come out of it. Look at that great drawing by Mr. Jimmy Palmiotti to Gary. And this is a treasure that I've shown many people. Yeah. I kid this. We call this the Library of Comics because I have all these comics, and this place is set up like a museum. And whenever I do a museum tour, this book always comes out. Your name is always mentioned. And this book, fantastic book. And, what you did with that character of Hex was amazing. I loved your work on it. And so I'm going to assume that you're a fellow that really likes Westerns the way you.
I do. And I would have done more of that book. When it came out with the movie, it kind of destroyed the sales.
Yes.
And by the way,
I didn't even see it. By the way,
Warner Brothers people sat with me and told me to my face, "You're not going to be involved with this movie, but we're basing it on your books."
Did you get credited on that one at least? No.
Well, that happy to not be credited on that.
That one I wasn't. Look, one of the guys from Warner Brothers, I was on the Warner Brothers lot. He pulled me in his office and said, "We're making a Jonah Hex movie. Your books reinvigorated the character, and we're using it for models, model the character look and whatever. They're using our books." And I said, "Great." I said, "How can I help? Like, can I get consult or?" And they're like, "No, you're not involved at all." And I'm like, "Well, why not?" I said, "Why not?" I've written, I think at that point it was like 55 of them. And I said, "I've written this, Justin and I, why don't you take us in as consultants? We can help make sure this stuff's pretty factual." "No, we don't need your help. We know what we're doing." And then like a month later, they gave me a script to read. And I was like, the script has some issues. And then it only got worse from there. But I will say there was a producer on it, Andrew Lazar, who flew us out to the set to visit. So we did get to hang out with, I think we had lunch with Josh Brolin and John Malkovich. And I got to meet Diane Lane.
Oh, there you go.
Diane was there with her husband, Josh, at the time, right?
Yeah.
And it was fun, but I knew the movie was doomed, and they didn't want us involved. And okay, fine, and I was like, but the worst part was the movie came out. It was not a very good movie. It didn't follow the character.
No.
I mean, he literally had to dig people up and make them de-zombied. I don't know what the hell was going on. Anyway, but I will say, like, what happened was the movie bombed, and all the bookstores and Barnes and Nobles across America had our Jonah Hex trades. And because the movie bombed, they returned them all.
Oh.
So all my trade books are now officially out of print on Jonah Hex because that movie bombed, and they never put them back in print. DC never collected my Jonah Hexes, never put them back in print, never did an omnibus, nothing. So 70 issues of Jonah Hex, which would make 2 great omnibuses, by the way.
Yes.
Never collected. I asked for it every year. Honestly, I asked for that, and I asked for them to reprint Power Trip by Power Girl every year, and they finally did that. And it sold really well. The 12 issues of Power Girl, actually it's 15 altogether, that Amanda and I did on Power Girl. But Jonah Hex, man, it just I don't know what,
and was this
tell you,
this before All-Star Western that you did, or during?
Yeah, because we did Jonah Hex, and that was Dan the deal. Dan said, we have to cancel Jonah Hex at 70. But I'm doing this thing. It's was it Rebirth or something?
New 52. It was
New 52. He says, do you want to maybe do a Jonah Hex story, but you have to tie it in with Gotham, like in the. Yeah. And I said, we can do it. Just let us do it. We can have fun with that. And we had Moratat doing the art. and he said also you can do backup stories. So I did all the Justin and I did all the backup stories where we revived some of the older characters, and we got to do that for 30 something issues, and we did get Darwin to do the last issue, which
That was a beautiful issue. That was a beautiful issue.
Know, Darwin did 3 issues. He did I call it the Canadian issue with the wolves and everything, which we wrote for. It has the Mounties in it because we wrote that for Canada, for Darwin, who lived in Canada. I said, I'm doing a Canadian issue for you of Jonah Hex, and then we wrote issue 50. Darwin automatically said, I want to do. I think Justin and I pitched him the story, and he says, I'm in, because we said, all right. He said, I said, I want to do Jonah Hex 50 where he kills 50 people in the book. And Darwin says, I'm in. So if you go back and read that Jonah Hex, he kills 50 people in it.
Well, one of the funny things we do on our Character of the Week, we have badass moments. And sometimes we're struggling. We all universally said, well, here's the thing with Hex. Every single issue is a badass moment. He's got tons of badass moments. The problem is narrowing his badass moments down, because every issue Hex is doing something badass. What a great character. And it is a shame that he's not being used right now, and that movie was so bad, because this is a great Western hero. He doesn't have to have powers or anything like that. It's just a great Western anti-hero, man. Oh.
And one of the badass moments that I picked, one of the badass moments I picked for it was the issue you wrote where his dad dies, and he gets shot, and the whole issue is just him sitting there, where he's just sitting there watching me. He's like, won't you die already? And then he buries him in the gold, he pisses on the grave, and you're like, I was like, man, that's such
that was the Jordy Burnett drew those issues.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. There was a 3-issue arc about his dad.
Yeah.
And actually the one that you had, the hardcover, we wrote that specifically for Tony DeZugna.
Oh, what a tribute for him to draw this. Yes.
Yeah, Tony, I saw him at a show, and I said, would you ever consider, maybe, and he says, well, he goes, I have this idea, maybe Jonah Hex has a brother. And I'm like, okay, that's all I need. Let me go in and Justin and I wrote that for Tony specifically. And he drew a beautiful job he did on that, and he died not too long after that. Yeah.
Well, what a great tribute, though, to have that you have this piece of art. This whole book, the words.
What a sweet man he was.
Yeah,
he was a sweet man. I'll tell you another story about. It's sad. It's sad, but it's a nice story. There's an issue that Jonah Hex that Dick Giordano drew. He drew the whole issue, and it was when he was sick. His wife, I guess Dick's wife or woman, or I don't know what their relationship was. I think it was his wife. Came up and told me that he's very sick, and he had cancer, and he mentioned to her that he always wanted to draw an issue with Jonah Hex. So she called me up, and I said, "Say no more." And Justin and I wrote that issue in like 2 days, and we sent it over to Dick, and Dick said, "Of course I'll do it." And he drew it. It came out. He did a signing, and then he passed away like a month ago.
Oh, wow.
But we were so happy because he said to me, he goes, I love this story. You wrote it for me, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah, of course we wrote it for you. And he's like, and it was so great to do that for Dick because he was such a nice guy. And of course, why wouldn't I want a Dick Giordano?
Yeah.
I just never thought he would do one, And that's how that book was. Like, we literally, when I went to Spain, I met with Jordy Burnett, and we talked about, getting some issues together and doing them, and he did it. And the guys that the artists, the editor let me pick the artists. So I went out and I solicited all these different artists to do the book. Every time I met somebody, I'm like, would you like to do a Jonah Hex? Yeah. Okay, we'll write a story. What do you want? What do you like in the story? Oh, if you can do this or you can do that, or can I have this or can I have that? And that's how Justin and I would write them specifically for artists. That's why you got some of the best artwork out of the guys. The Hyde Ranch. There was one called the Hyde Ranch Murders. I think that was the title. But I wrote that specifically for Paul Galassi.
Great artist.
Because Paul said to me, he says, remember when Jim Strenko did S.H.I.E.L.D. and there was like 3 or 4 pages of silent panels with no words on it? I said, yeah. And he goes, I'd love to do something like that, but with Jonah Hex. And I wrote most of the book is silent.
Nice.
and it's the Hyde House Murders. It was called the Hyde House Murders, and I based it after a guy named John Hyde, who's also a producer in Hollywood, who has a ranch out in California, who let Man and I stay on the ranch to watch him do his thing, so I can learn a little bit more about
Nice.
the horses and stuff like that. But I did so much. We did so much research, and there was so much love in that book. Like I said, it always breaks my heart that they don't collect it because people can't find the trade books aren't available. Like you can't on Amazon, you have to buy them, like
Right.
re-put, people's copies, and they're not cheap.
No, and I'm happy. Thankfully, I have them all. Thank goodness, all the All-Star Westerns and all the ones. Plus, I have every individual issue of the All-Star Western. And I just happen to have this right by. We know what that is, right?
Yeah, I have one of those. I actually have two copies. I have my reading copy and I have my CGC copy.
Absolutely. So I have every issue of Weird Western. All the
the Fleischer stuff. Yeah.
Yes, I do. What's really back to Dick Giordano. That's kind of a special. I mean, again, that's showing, you didn't mean it to do this, but it shows what a fantastic individual you are to do that and to give him a nice little coda to his career. And what's kind of poignant in that too is you having your background as such a great inker, giving that to Dick Giordano, who is one of the greatest inkers.
Oh, absolutely.
Without we always think of the pencilers, right? Dick Giordano, needs to be recognized for what he was. I mean, he was a great penciler too, but as an inker, what he did on the Neil Adams works for so many things. Dick Giordano, hands down, is one of the greatest inkers that ever this business.
Him over Neil. Neil never looked better. Those Dead Man, all that stuff. Batman. When Dick and Neil were together, that was gold all the time.
Without a doubt. And the thing is, we still talk about Neil, thankfully, but we don't talk about Dick Giordano, and it was wonderful to, be able to do that because of having this conversation with you, and for you to help him at the end of his life to do such a thing. I know, things like that don't go unnoticed by people. And when, I know when Denny O'Neil was toward the end of his writing days of Batman, Jim Aparo was winding down, and they wanted to launch a brand new creative team for one of the big anniversary issues. Maybe it was Batman 500. Right. And Denny O'Neil was insistent that Aparo do penciling on that work because he knew that book would be reprinted many, many times. Sure. And that happened to be the biggest single issue selling book of Aparo's career.
Yeah.
But Denny looked out for him. I mean, listen, my Batman, and probably yours, was Neil Adams and Jim Aparo.
Absolutely.
And Jim Aparo's hands, I always tell people, look at the hands he draws. You don't want to get hit with those hands, whether it was Batman's hands, Wildcat's hands, even Jim Corrigan, and these jaws. He used to draw these granite jaws on these guys. Yeah. So I mean, he drew some manly men, but his hands. I always say Jim Aparo's hands. There's a great Brave and the Bold cover. I want to say it's 118 or 119 when Wildcat and Batman are in the ring wailing on one another, wearing cestises, and the Joker's the referee. That is a top 10 favorite cover of mine all time. So
I love this kind of conversation because I can picture 20-year-olds going, "What the hell are they talking about?"
Yeah, what the hell? And that's why I try to bring this up on the channel when I can, is highlight these guys that we're not remembering because damn it, they
know. I have a thing with, I wish I was a filmmaker because I literally would do a documentary series on every artist. I wish I was a filmmaker because I'm not.
Listen, here's a crazy thing I've had in my mind. I haven't done this yet. You have clout. Maybe you could do this. But in my mind, I've already started drafts. A letter to Ken Burns, right? Can you imagine what a great series? He has documented Americana with jazz, with country music, with baseball. And, supposedly the art forms that we gave the world as Americans are jazz and comics. Think how rich the comic history is, how vibrant it could be with the images. And you start with, when these little art houses popped up and, with DC and Marvel, Schuster has his, and Siegel, they have their little art house. Stan Lee, is, I mean, not Stan Lee, but Jack Kirby and Joe Simon have their little art house, and they're hiding and they're doing work under assumed names. And you have all these wars going on. You have an East Coast, West Coast war with the Fleischer Studios and with Disney with animation.
So much great history. So much.
Oh,
I always, because people always ask me, will you do a podcast? You do a podcast, you do a podcast. And I always say, the only one I'd want to do is where I interview other creators, because I can pull stuff out of them that they normally wouldn't talk about, Yeah. I said that would be my one superpower, is I'd get them to talk about their line and how they, how they, where other people wouldn't actually have that conversation with them, because they're not really, that wouldn't be anything they talk about,
When you talked about, how important inkers are, one thing you hear a lot from fans, for some of these artists, I don't want to name names to, disparage anyone, but for artists that have been around for a long time that are still drawing stuff now, one thing I hear a lot about them is, oh, their stuff's not as good as it used to be. It's not like it used to be. I get it. Styles change over the years. Some people kind of get it in their head about how great they are. But I also think too, well, look who was inking them when they were at their peak for the stuff that everybody loved.
Yeah.
And look who's inking them now. Like,
no, I agree. I mean, look, the guys that still had it were like the Will Eisners and the Joe Kuberts.
Yeah.
Right. Because they inked their own work, those guys.
Yes. Yep.
So up until the day Joe died and Will died, this stuff was looking amazing. It never went away. It never got worse. Will would experiment more because he was doing different kind of storytelling, but it was all there. And Joe was just as powerful as ever. His work was powerful as ever. He did the Jew Gangster book and a couple of books right before he passed, and they're beautiful. And I think, like, when people say, oh, he's not the same or whatever, I think you're right in a way, because inkers were helping them out. I also think that the world around them makes them feel a little obsolete. And it's hard because artists are hypersensitive to any kind of anything, their surroundings, especially their work, because they think about it, getting ahead of one. They sit there and they're working and they're drawing stuff so other people could enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have people out there bad mouthing their work, and all their existence is to try to make other people enjoy something. And so they're very sensitive. And most artists, we know, they're very sensitive about stuff. So you have to handle them differently than you do other people. And you look at our legends that are still around, like Greg Hildebrandt and Walt Simonson, and these guys, and they're the sweetest, nicest people on earth.
Oh yeah.
Every time you meet them, you walk away and you go, man, I'm so lucky I got to meet them. Holy shit, And I'm just like, but the companies aren't treating them that great, and
no,
and the people at the cons, sometimes some of the cons, they treat them like, oh, okay, well, they're these old guys. We'll put them at a table in the back.
Oh, well, it broke my heart at that con that you did this book for me, and Darwin was there. All the lines, there was hardly anybody going to see Bernie, and it just, I was like, are you kidding me?
Sense.
This is one of the greatest men that has ever done anything in our industry. And at one point, I did get to ask Darwin Cook. I said, man, you're right next to Bernie Wrightson. And he's like, I know. He was so happy to have been that close to Bernie. But it's it just kills me. Look, brother, when you want to do a podcast and you want to talk about the artists of the past and things like that, I'm your man. I'd be happy to do something like with you. Talk about Nick Cardy. How great Nick Cardy was.
I have a beautiful Nick Cardy cover. I have a cover from one of the horror ones. I have two Nick Cardy covers. I have one from the horror one. It's an alligator pulling a girl. It's like it's this great cover.
It's unexpected.
Yeah, unexpected.
I got it right here.
He's got everything. Let me tell you, we went to his house and we did a video. It was about 2 hours long, and that's it. All of the books he has, the memorabilia, the autographs, the original art. I have that by Nick Cardy, and I have the one that's the cover I have. I call it my Florida art.
Yep.
And I have the other one I have by Nick Cardy. The original is the ghost. This ghost woman is coming down the staircase, and it's stunning.
Ghost, I think it might be Ghost 11, maybe, but I understand. Yep, she's in a white. I think she's in white too.
The white. And I bought both those covers like 5 years ago from a guy who had him. He wanted to sell them to me for like $3,000 or $4,000 each, and I said to him, I said, he goes, they're not popular. I said, no, I'll take them both. I'm like gorgeous.
Do you know what Nick Carty did during World War II?
Did he kill Hitler? I hope.
Let me tell you what he did. He drove Sherman tanks.
He drove.
He drove Sherman tanks, and he had a great story of where a tank, a Panther, a Panzer had him lined up, and the joke was that a Panther could shoot through 3 Shermans because they were so thin with the metal.
Right.
And he was lined up, and he hit a ditch, and the shell went over his head. But the one thing the Shermans could do, because they were light, because they were thin, is they could haul ass, and he got the hell out of there. but Nick Carty driving Sherman tanks in World War II, and I love to get our World War II vets some love too. But that's what, again, this is one of the pillars of the industry, and it's a shame. And Nick Carty could draw a Western, superhero.
I mean, Batlash. Come on, Batlash.
Oh, the cover of Batlash 2 is one of my great unsung covers, where Batlash is behind a tombstone holding a little girl in the middle of a snowstorm, and there's like 4 or 5 Indians walking by. Jimmy, we could do this all day. I need to let Dan get the questions.
Nick Carty is an underappreciated artist. He, as I got older, I liked him more and more.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Well, let's. One thing we want to get to is, you have the Kickstarter going.
Yes,
now.
sir.
I do.
You're doing all this stuff. So I know you've talked about how the companies, Marvel, DC, some of them have, do not treat the creators, always the way that they should. So, in 2014, I think that was the year that you launched your first Kickstarter, wasn't it?
I was the first professional comic artist to do it, and
for Queen Crab.
And I did like 22 more after it, I think. But
so what was it that made you decide, what, I'm going to go do this Kickstarter thing. Because a lot of them do it now, but like you said, you were the first. I'm going to go do this on my own. And then what was the learning curve? Because it wasn't just, I'm doing the pages and turn them in. It's like, no, I got to do the pages. I got to be responsible for the writing, the art, the lettering, the coloring, getting it printed, getting it distributed, like getting everybody, like it seems like such a monumental task, especially when you're the first one to go out and do it on this platform.
So I was reading about the website Kickstarter and what they did, and I was like, I wonder if I could apply it to find enough people interested in backing a comic that I was doing. And I wrote them and I talked to them, and I did my first one, which was Queen Crab, which is just a crazy book I did. But I saw it as like my third one in. I said, okay, I'm finally figuring out the shipping part, because literally my first 3 campaigns, I spent 2 weeks just putting comics in bags and boards and then boxes and then walking them over to the post office. And I realized that this is not for the weak. Okay, this is not a thing to do for. But I started fine-tuning my Kickstarters, and I got my friend Patrick started helping me with them. And I realized that, wait a minute, I can put out a comic, own it 100%, and then I can communicate with the people buying it. Because when you back one of my Kickstarters, you can literally write and ask me questions, and I answer everyone. And I will have their addresses, and they'll, I'll be able to, like, I'll see names that I see familiar every Kickstarter. I'm 22 in. There is a group of 150 names that I know. I see them on every campaign. Once in a while, I'll throw something extra. I'll write a little note to them but these are loyal customers. It's a grassroots type of thing. So I learned that, okay, because I was working for all these companies that owned half of my material. I Aftershock would own half of Super Zero, and this company would own half of that, and Dark Horse would own a percentage of that. And guess what? When they made movies or TV, I got crap, or I was the guy that was, we got to throw him a couple of bucks. And so I said, I got to start owning my own things. I really need to go, and I don't want a company. I don't want to put it through Image, because even with Image, I have to pay a fee, and I'm one of many. And is there a way I can do this from my house or from my office where I can actually control the work I'm doing? And nobody's going to tell me what to do as far as content. I can actually write a story and put TNA in it. I can have topless girls. I can have violence. I could do anything I want. And Kickstarter was it. And I started doing it. And then people saw I was having success for it. And I helped guys like Brian Polito and Billy Tucci and a whole bunch of people. I helped a ton of people with their Kickstarters, so much so they're much better than me. But I started doing it, and I still kept working for the companies. I was doing my Kickstarters while I was doing Harley, and I was doing all these other things. But every once a year or twice a year, I would get a book out, and I would own it, and it would be my property, and it would be I would be responsible for it. And as I went along, I said, I can find better printing. I'm going to do spot varnish on this one. I'm going to use better paper. I'm going to import some cover stock. I want this book to be like killer. The last one I did, I have it in front of me because it's just sitting here. I had to give it to a buddy of mine. Was a Western, and I did a thing called The Hunters. And I had this beautiful Bill Sienkiewicz cover. And you see it's spot varnish. It's hard to see.
Yeah.
But the printing is like the best printing ever. And I even used a photo cover a buddy did on the back cover. But it's got nudity, it's got violence, it's got all the things
all the good things.
It's all the stuff that we like.
Well, it's the stuff I wanted to do in my Jonah Hex books or in my whatever. So the Kickstarters have become a way for me to do books. I offer a retailer's level. So like my new Kickstarter, to get the 3 books, it's $40. It's 3 issues. It's called Fantasima. It's like a female Tarzan type book. It does it, it's there's the link. Thank you so much. You can go look at it there. But I offered a retailer pack, so I have a thing that it's $200, and you get 3 issues. You get 12 of each 3 issues, and it's worlds cheaper. It's like 40% of the price that you should charge. Plus, retailers can actually charge more because once I'm done with my Kickstarter, the books go up in price because I only print 10% over my print run, so I don't have a lot of the comics. And so I do these Kickstarters. I put them out. They get funded. My audience is growing for the Kickstarters. And again, it's just me doing whatever I want. And I have Amanda does some covers for them. This one, I did the book with Pierre Brito, and Craig Whedon, who's a screenwriter, wrote it with me because Craig's a big comic book fan. And we wrote this epic comic book. I mean, these 3 books, it's almost 90 pages of art. And I got covers by Joe Linsner. Joe Linsner did the 3 covers that you can get for the set for $40. These are the most, when you hold these books, you're going to understand that they don't feel like anything you've ever gotten before. And then I got guest covers like Dave Johnson, Dan Panosian, and Amanda does these things. They're 3 mystery covers. They're limited. We do like print runs. These books, sometimes they have a print run of 100 or 200 copies. And what retailers do is a lot of them get them, and then they resell them for more later on. They make them specialty items in the store, or, what they paid, they double and then maybe triple the price on them sometimes. There's a secondary market for my Kickstarters, but all I'm concerned about is the first market, which is getting them out to stores, getting them out to people. And I built an audience up over the years, and Fantasima is my latest. That's the one that's up right now. So you can check out the campaign. And also, because I want to make sure people can get it all over the world, you can buy the digital version, which is $15 for the 3 books, and we send you a PDF, so you own the PDF. It's not like a downloadable comic, and then 2 years later the company goes out of business. You don't have it anymore. This is an actual PDF you get of the 3 books. You can read it on any kind of format, anything, and we send that direct to your email. So there's no shipping, because I have a lot of customers that are in like Japan and also in like New Zealand and those kind of places where to send a package is like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Do you bring any of these books to shows? Because my problem, I follow you on Twitter and all too. I am so bad on tech. I've never done anything Kickstarter because I just don't even know how to navigate the damn queue. It's a wonder I can get in to do what I do with these fellas here, but they've trained me like a monkey. But if we,
I don't bring them. I'll tell you, I don't because at the shows, what happens is, so I print the books in the Kickstarter to the orders, right?
Okay, I got you.
So sometimes I have books that I did the book, like, I'll give you an example, like we did Pop Kill. I had an Adam Hughes cover, and I only had whatever I printed and 10% because we have damages, so I have to replace damages.
I would have loved to have one of those covers. I saw that cover. Looks very much like Jennifer Lawrence, and I saw you had a 10-0 of one. Wow.
You
did. Graded 10-0. Or
how much did it cost?
No, I saw you had it. You posted.
Oh yeah, no, I have the that's where is it?
Yeah.
I have that. Oh, I just had it out for somebody, but it's on my shelf.
Yeah.
But the
yeah, because I'd love to have a copy of that book. That was
well, you know, cover. When you see me, we'll have to talk. But
oh, okay, all right.
What I did when people who bought it from the Kickstarter, I think it was either $40 or $50 when you bought it, and it was limited to 300. I think it was 300 made, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after the Kickstarter, you know, people ask me, "Do you have any more?" And I'm like, "No, I print. That's what I printed." And now they go for over $1,000 each.
Oh my God, I didn't realize they got that high. Jesus.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the ones in CGC are a little more money, but the average is like they average like 700, 800. Well, because let's be honest, because there's only 300 of them. It's not
absolutely.
Like it's not like so. I don't want to make collectibles, but a Kickstarter by its rules are you only print what you order and then you print a little over. So by its general nature, I don't mass print them because I don't want a warehouse full of books. I got to get rid of these things. You know, I got to make a living. So when people order the Kickstarter, everything they order is a limited edition because it's limited to the Kickstarter. So if only 100 people back a level, that's pretty much there's only like 110 or 115 of those books in existence. So I don't have.
I got a few of them right here, and I mean they're.
Oh yeah, Denver and Abaddon. That's the other Western.
Denver was the first one that you, not the first one you did, but like looking at your backers were the first one, like 200 something, and then 400 something. I think Denver was the first one that really blew up and had like 1,500, 100 people on it. Where like you were, looking at your campaigns, you had, a steady rise, and then you got to Denver, which was your fourth or fifth one, where it was just like a huge jump.
Yeah, Denver, and then the sex and violence books, which I have another sex and violence book coming. They have an audience, so it's like my audience is like 1,500 people average, but that doesn't mean there's 1,500 books of each made because they buy digitals or they buy special whatever they buy. So So I mean I'd love to tell you like I don't bring them to the shows because I'll have like one or two copies maybe. Right. But I don't bring them. I don't have them to sell that much. And the other thing is, I want the people who backed it to have something special. And like you must have read or looked at Denver. It doesn't look like many other books. And actually, the guy who drew Denver is the one who drew Fantasima, the new one. Same Pierre Brito is the same artist.
Yeah, I would have loved the Western stuff, but again, because I'm such a tech idiot. Matter of fact, Dan there just started a Kickstarter of his own.
Right.
And I have to, so I finally told him, Dan, I don't know how to do the Kickstarter thing, but show me so I can support you. So that's my buddy, and he's going to have to teach me how I can do that. But that's
all right. I'm gonna do you a favor. If you look at the Fantasima campaign, and if you want to do the retail level or some other level, just let me know. You can email me, okay? We could take. I'll take care of you.
I'll figure that out. But it's
we'll figure it out. But don't be afraid of technology.
Yep.
Well, you also, like you said, you do have some extra books, and I know you have the the website. Well, let me throw that up there. The paper film where people can get, people can get that stuff from you. They can get. I
have limited numbers. I do sell Adam stuff pretty quick because it's funny because the Adam Hughes one I actually had on the website for cheap. And it sold out in one day. So I was like, okay, that went. And I have this other one, like a Trigger Girl one, and Adam Hughes did. And I don't know if I still have any left. But I got to check. But that's another beautiful cover. Adam is like that exception, right? When Adam does something, it's like everybody wants it. Look, Adam did a cover for me where, we did a topless version and a wet T-shirt version because I don't care,
Right.
Tits are great. Everybody loves tits. So we did that version. And they came out of the woodwork trying to find that book, And I'm like saying that has more to do than how great Adam Hughes is. Let's be honest. That guy could draw anything. It's not only girl, he can draw anything. He's a monster,
I mean, I see the, unfortunately, I'm someone, I kind of work paycheck to paycheck, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got the money to spend. Like I see these alternate covers like on the Kickstarters you do and some other people, and I'm like, man, like oh, that looks so great. I'd love to get that. I don't have it though. Like I'll
Right.
just have to get the regular cover, but but that's the reason that it's the incentive cover, because it's so,
Yeah, I mean,
so
I'm
nice looking.
at the end of the day, I want people just to get the book, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Some of those levels are created for collectors, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, my basic level is the cheapest I can sell it, and the digital level is the cheapest I can sell it. And I want as many people as I can to read the book, because what good is doing it if people aren't reading it?
Yeah.
And with these Kickstarters, I'm trying to build my audience. And doing shows like this, I may pick up 1 or 2 new people. And that's fantastic for me. Even it makes a difference, 1 or 2 people. It really does. But the future of comics, like I said, I am best friends with a retailer, and he always says to me, he goes, one day you'll put it out, right? And I'm like, I said, not soon, because I have other work to do. I said, but you can buy my Tales of the Gunslinger, and you can buy my mainstream stuff all the time. Buy as many as you can, because that's great. But this is like I call this a boutique business. It's not for everybody. It definitely is for Jimmy Palmiotti fans, because if you want to read a book by me where I have no restraints, that's what it is.
Well, one question I had about the new one is, on some of your Kickstarters, they're just single issues. Some of them, like some of these here are the graphic novels.
Yeah.
Some of like this one, it's 3 issues. So what made you decide on this one to do it as 3 separate issues instead of a graphic novel? And then what goes into it when you say like, well, this one's going to be a single issue, and then we're going to do another one for a single issue? Or what was the one, the Pop Kills, where it was like a Kickstarter for issue 1, Kickstarter
4
for
issues,
issue 2, and then the third one was for 3
right.
and 4.
Right. So Pop Kill is a long story. We don't even want to do it, but it had to be broken up like that. This one, we looked at it as a trade, and we did the math on how much the trade costs. And so with Kickstarter, you try to hit an amount, and then you want to go over it, right? Because that amount is what it costs me to get everything done and pay everybody. Anything over that becomes profit. Like now I never pay myself on my Kickstarters. I never get a page rate. My artists, my designers, everyone else gets paid full, whatever they want. That's their full price. And I pay myself out of the profit. So I'm hoping to go above the amount all the time, because I want to get paid for what I'm doing.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But with Fantasima, we looked at it as a 90-page thing with a trade, and it's a square bound. And we realized that when we do that, it sells less. People would rather get back for let's say the $38 or the $40 and get 3 separate books that connect, than get one trade. And it goes against my brain, the way my brain thinks, because my brain thinks I just want the one big trade.
Right.
But we're dealing with a percentage of the audience that are comic book collectors, and they want to have their comic in a bag, and they want a backing board. And like in this thing, I sign, like there's a level where I sign the books, and you get a certificate of authenticity with every book. And there's a collector mentality out there. And we went out and asked a certain amount of people that it does our campaigns, would you rather have it as a trade or 3 separate books with different covers and everything? This was Joe Lynn's. Joe Lynn did 3 covers, and most of them came back with, we want 3 separate books, but we want them all at once. So we want this Kickstarter, you get a book, you get a package, and it has all 3 issues, 3 different covers. And again, then we didn't even talk about stretch goals, but as we do stretch goals, everything is added. There's sometimes extra books, extra digital books, sticker sheets, whatever. So they wanted a package with these separate books. And I have to go with the audience that, because that's how the way they want to buy it. They want to put it like a comic book. They want to put it in a bag, and they want to, that's what they want.
Those are your clients. You got to listen to them.
Yeah.
So what's the new book about?
So it's my version of like a Jungle Girl type comic, and it's about it takes place in South America, and it's a brother and sister. It's a family, and the father's like a multi-billionaire. He's a big businessman, and something happens in the beginning where the parents go on vacation with just a younger daughter. They leave the son behind because he kind of did some stupid shit in school, and they leave him behind. The father's trying to teach him a lesson. He's like, you can't cheat. You gotta. The father's being a father, right? And and they get and what happens is while they're on this boat trip, the family's on a boat trip. There's a seismic earthquake in the ocean, and it capsized the boat, and basically the family's gone, and the son's left alone. And it happened. And then 20 years later, the son's he's in New York. He's a billionaire, but he's dealing with. Hang on a second. My wife is sending me texts. That's very cute, Amanda. Thank you. She doesn't want to interrupt me. Anyway, 20 years later, he's kind of like he's got everything he wants in the world. He's a millionaire. He's now in New York. He's living in New York, but he's just got a very unsettled soul. It just never left him, the tragedy of his family, and he's got all these demons he's dealing with. And then some stuff happens. I don't want to give away too much, but he's at an art gallery, and it's a photographer that took pictures of these tribes in South America, and there's a girl there that looks like his sister in the photo. And he's like, that looks like my sister. And there's like, well, your sister died. He's like, well, the body was never found. Like, how do I really know? Like, my parents were never found. Nothing was ever found. And he starts a trip down into the rainforest to go find this tribe with some help to see if this girl is really his sister. And that's what the story's about. And
I like it.
yeah, there's a lot of madness, a lot of killing, a lot of shooting, a lot of craziness in it. But it's basically a story about a brother and sister that is separated. And then, of course, life goes on and they meet again, but they're in completely different places. And it's an epic story, but it's told in 3 issues. You can read them from beginning to end. And, it's just me having some fun. I loved Tarzan when I grew up. I got to be honest. The Johnny Weissmuller movies were like in my soul, I watched them every time they were on TV, and I thought, I don't want to do another Tarzan because that's been told, but I want to do a Jungle Girl book that had a lot of the roots of that. And
I like it.
Fantasima is.
We talked about Kubert. People sleep on how great his Tarzan was.
Oh my God.
Oh, man, are you kidding me? Wow. But
Joe was a force of nature in comics, and we'll never have another Joe Kubert. And I love both his sons, but Joe is like a hurricane next to them. And the body of work Joe did in his career, and the only shame of it is he died at 83 because up until his last day he was still drawing. Yeah. So it's just but anyway, he's another person that he was Amanda's teacher at the Kubert School.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and he was somebody I would visit, and I would have good long talks with. He would shake my hand and crush every bone in my hand.
We interviewed Dan, and I interviewed Tom Mandrake, and to see how Tom Mandrake is still involved and how with that school and how much it means to him is awesome to see him taking on that mantle at that school. So that's pretty awesome.
He was a special guy, and both his boys got his talent too, which is pretty wild.
You know what the first book they all 3 worked on together was?
I think it was. Go ahead. You can tell me.
The Sergeant Rock 422.
Didn't Adam do lettering in it or something?
I think so, but yeah, that was the first time, and that was the last issue of Sergeant Rock.
Right.
That was the last issue, and they all 3 got to work on that. So
I have a beautiful Sergeant Rock cover that the family gave me as a gift when he passed.
Oh man,
that was I have it. You can't see it; it's framed, but it's yeah. He was he's one of those. I'm like it's sad because I think of all these great people I knew, that.
But you got to meet him. How wonderful is that?
I said, I could talk about Joe. There could be a whole nother show. I could just talk about Joe Kubert. It's easy for me to do.
Look, my Mount Rushmore was Perez, Ross, that's the only one I haven't met. Neil Adams and Bernie Wrightson, and I got to meet 3 of the 4, and the one that's I haven't met still out there. But
Alex Ross.
I have never met Alex Ross.
Oh yeah, he's a wonderful guy. Yeah, you he does show up at the like Chicago cons because whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But I had the pleasure of meeting those other three, and then some of these other, unfortunately, I never got to meet Cardi or Aparo or Kubert. I do have a nice signed book from Kubert, but to see these greats, and I always tell people on our shows here, go to these conventions. Go to the conventions and see creators that you really love. I got to meet Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, and I have them signatures on the Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Hard Traveling Heroes, and a Batman volume. I always tell people, if you're a fan of the modern day Batman, you owe an incredible debt of gratitude to Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil.
Absolutely.
You owe them an incredible debt of gratitude. And so meet these people that have done so much for our industry, and you fall in that category too. People need to come out and see you and see your lovely wife, Amanda, and see up the shows, because when y'all come to the shows, yes, there's a lot of people, but when you see these people that are standing there waiting to meet you, and they are thrilled to meet y'all because your art has touched them, that leaves you with a good feeling, and it's a good feeling all around. So
I treat every person. Amanda and I are we spend time with everybody.
Yes, you do.
We're always the last ones to leave a con. One guy gave us a nickname called me and Amanda Gargoyles. I didn't understand why they were calling us that. And they said it's because you show up on time and you don't leave until the show's done. And they said that's what makes you a gargoyle. And I'm like, oh, so it's a good thing. And they're like, yeah, it's a good thing. I'm like, oh, okay.
Because you interact with every person that comes in.
Yeah,
y'all interact. You give, because they have waited and all that, and you give them their time. You're not giving people the rush.
At that show, I saw you at. I was giving them candy too.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that. Some woman came. She said she worked in a candy distribution center, and she brought me a giant bag of licorice and chocolate bars, and she said, "This is a gift for you guys." So we had big lines. So I ran down the line every 20 minutes and fed everybody.
Oh, y'all are fantastic, and I can't get away without me at least saying that this, you talk about the books you do now are unfiltered. I don't know how the hell this got published.
Oh,
this is the most hilarious decade, and I will never think about a superhero saving a plane in the same way ever again. I tell people you can only see this for the first time once, but The Pro by you, Amanda, and one of my favorites, Garth Ennis. Oh my goodness,
that was a comic created in a bar in Germany, and
I knew it had to have alcohol involved.
And then we came home, and Amanda and Garth started actually working on it. And I was like, oh, this is going to happen. My job to try to sell it to a company to publish. By the way, Image was not the first company. By the way,
I bet.
Image was the only company that said yes to it. Everyone else, the closest I came was Top Shelf, and Top Shelf said, we'll publish it, but we don't like the name The Pro. Can you name it something else? And I'm like, no.
Well, today it might end up being one of your Kickstarters.
I said, this is I said, this is a finished book. It has the cover done, and Amanda did her bending over to make the P. That's where the P and the RO.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was like, we're not going to change it. This is, and then Image, Image saw it, they read it, and they came me back and they said, yeah, we're publishing that. I'm like, great.
Nice.
Oh man, they had some cojones on them, didn't they? So
I said, if it was, if you're doing that today, you probably would just do it as a Kickstarter and be like, I'll do it myself. Screw all you all.
I would. It would probably even be crazier than that. But
Well, when I first
it was the perfect book to have Amanda draw, because no matter how rude she got, it was still cute in a weird way,
Without a doubt.
Well, when I first messaged you, what people might not know, when I first messaged you a couple months ago to try and set up an interview, you said, well, I'm finished, this Kickstarter I just did is finishing up. I'm going to launch this other one soon. And I said, oh, do it then. I was like, oh, okay. Do you already have the next one planned? He just went, yeah, LOL. So how far in advance do you have your Kickstarters planned? Like, you're running this one now. How many more coming up do you know that you have that you're either already working on, or you're kind of, or you're kind of thinking in your head, maybe?
I have three that more I want to do for this year. One of them is a weird one that I got permission from one of the big companies to do. It's a weird one. I don't know how well it's going to do, so that one I have to be careful with. And then I have a Sex and Violence one coming up, Sex and Violence 4, which, by the way, is a good Kickstarter because I think we're going to reprint issue 1, 2, and 3 as separate comics. So if you want to get all 4, you can get all 4 at once.
Nice.
That's a book with, it's sort of like EC Comics, but with a lot more sex and violence in it. And then I have another Kickstarter that has 3 one-shots I wrote.
Wow.
And that one's kind of fun because one of the properties is sort of known, and then, and yeah, so I have them lined up because what I do is any profit I make, I put it into the next book. So I have the artists. I'm paying a lot of guys their full rate.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I ask them how much do you want per page, and they give me a number, and that's what I pay them. I don't try to talk them down. This is all respect.
Right.
I tell them, I said, don't get crazy with me, but
yeah,
I'll match your Marvel and DC rate, no problem.
Well, Jimmy, I get it. The theme of us having this conversation with you, I think, is respect, because when you first went into those Marvel offices as a young man, you were giving them respect. You were being helpful. You were being there. You were being available. But it's all about respect. And what you're doing now as a Kickstarter, you're incorporating these other professionals that you've worked with, that you have respect for, and you're giving them respect because you're not trying to beat them down on the prices. They're an artist. They're going to tell you what they feel their work is worth, and
Absolutely.
You are respecting them and saying, yes, that's what your work is worth, and you're paying them. So respecting people, as you've done in this industry, in this field, has really done wonderfully for you. And I think it's a hallmark of your career, is that respect. And also, you have shown us fans has respect too, when we meet you, when we interact with you.
Yeah.
And when we buy your work that we enjoy so much, you are showing us respect, that you are putting out such a quality product. So I think respect is a pretty good word to hang on somebody, is how to treat people. And I think that's what you're doing.
I think that's what my mom and dad taught me. So, you don't fall far from the tree.
Well, you mentioned, you've got this Kickstarter that you're running, obviously, which I got it on the screen there. I highly encourage everyone to do it. I backed it. I'm getting all 3 issues. I had backed it originally as a digital one, and then, actually, while you were talking on here, I was thinking like, no, I want the physical issues. And while we were talking, I pulled it up on here, and I upped my pledge level of that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
some of the other ones too. But you mentioned Gunslinger Spawn too.
Yes.
So what, but we were talking about that before we came on air. So do you want to tell everyone about what projects you have coming up other than the Kickstarter, like Gunslinger Spawn or anything else that you have?
Yeah, the Gunslinger Spawn starts in September. It's a monthly, and it's basically Gunslinger, Todd's character Gunslinger, but set in the Old West. So it's not in modern day. It's when he first became the Gunslinger. As a matter of fact, the first issue, if you never read Gunslinger, you could actually pick up the first issue, because I make sure to explain who the character is and what he is, in case it's a new book to people, Nice. And that's a monthly, and that's going to be in the tradition of Jonah Hex, the type of books I did, where they're mostly done in 1 or done in 2 stories with connecting themes running through them. Mm-hmm. So there's a bigger story, but also I'm doing them as 1-shots and 2-shots because I like to tell a lot of story in one book. I like to read. So when you read my comics, there's a lot to read. It's not a comic you read in 2 minutes. You're going to sit for a while, put your feet up and read the book and relax and enjoy it. Because I want to take you somewhere else in the book,
I'll look forward to that. Forward to
it. It's good too that, you don't have to worry too about like, oh, I'm picking this issue up off the rack because it looks cool, and I'm in the 5th part of a 13-part story, and because that can discourage some people too.
Yeah, so characters have an arc, right? They have a story arc, and we tell stories in the arc, right? We grab a spot and we kind of tell it. And my thing is, I don't like that a middle of a series has to be dependent on everything that came before it and everything after it. I want to tell a good story. I want somebody to pick up the book and have a full experience from the one issue. And when we did Jonah Hex, it was like that. Yeah. And actually, when I did Harley, it was like that too. There was a lot of story in one book. It didn't just push through so it can get 6 issues to make a trade. Like I was never that guy. I was like, no, we're going to tell a full story here. And I think it's from my traditional roots of reading comics. They used to all be one shots. But I do have continuing themes, and there are 2-parters in the Gunslinger one, the Tales of Deadly Tales. But Todd's letting me go crazy on it, and Patrick's drawing a beautiful book, and I'm really happy with how the book is looking, because it looks like nothing else out there. And especially in Todd's universe, anyway, that's coming. And then I'm in talks with another company about doing a book, but it may or may not happen because I have unusual demands. That may or may not happen.
That could be the name of a book.
Unusual demand. I like that. Unusual demand.
It's with one of the big two, and it's just I want to do it my way, and so we're having that conversation right now with me and Amanda doing the writing it and drawing it. So it has to be the way she wants it, or else we're just going to move on to something else. Mm-hmm. I don't like getting involved in a job where it's a book that I don't want. Right. So I figure I only have enough days left on this earth. I got to do books that I want to do because it's going to show in the work.
Yep.
So I'd rather not do stuff than put out stuff that just to fill a rack. I don't need my name out there. I need quality work out there. So
well, you've got a lot of that.
Yeah, so that's what we got coming up. And I have more Painkiller Jane coming. So
nice.
That's going to happen too.
And it's funny that you're the muse for Painkiller Jane. You're her muse.
I'm the muse. This one is like a crossover with Jane and another character, and it's kind of fun. But it's definitely adults only. This one is like.
That's how we like it.
Yeah, this one I'm writing, and as I'm writing it, I'm going. I don't know if that's a little crazy, but what the hell, let's do it.
You've got all these different genres you've written. I mean, superhero, sci-fi, crime, western. Like, is there any particular genre that you like writing more than the other, or is it just depending on what the story is?
I fall in love with the characters, so the genre is just the backdrop. I do love crime stuff too. I mean, I've been watching these seasons of Fargo, and they're amazing.
Oh, I finished the
last season was so good.
Yeah,
so good. Jimmy, I just finished Monsieur Spade. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that. I was waiting for all of them to come out first, and then
it's all 6 episodes.
Okay.
6 episodes. My wife and I just finished it yesterday. Clive Owen is fantastic. But I'm with you. I love the crime stuff. I read everything Brubaker puts out. That's a crime book.
Those guys, Phillips and Brubaker, man. Brubaker.
Yeah.
It's wonderful stuff. You know, I'm so glad they built an audience for it.
Well, you mentioned one of the guys that does, Sonny Kruger, that does the main podcast show on the station here, does a lot of extra work. He was an extra on one of the episodes of Fargo.
The Chris Rock one, I believe.
Oh, season 4. Yeah.
He was I think it was episode 5, I want to say. I don't remember what, but I know it was like a bank robbery, and he was an extra that was in the background.
Awesome.
But I know he was a prominent one.
Yeah. Well, it's such an excellent written show, right? Like,
yes.
It's and every season is different, except there's these little connecting things if you put the pieces together. But it's like it's hard to put out movies when you got TV that good.
Yeah.
Right, that you could take such a deep dive into.
Yeah.
Oh,
my wife. My wife is doing a deep dive. She's like,
"We gotta go. We gotta go.
Yeah.
We better let you go now."
All right.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it was a real pleasure, man. I had a good time, and please have me on again in the future.
Oh, we definitely will, and I definitely want to talk to you again when especially when the Gunslinger Spawn books come back. I'm going to make sure to reserve that.
That's a manly date right there.
So everyone,
I hear Jimmy, when we sign off, I want to talk to you just one second.
So everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Everyone, I encourage you to back the Kickstarter here. It's fantastic. Congratulations, one day out and it was almost fully funded. I mean,
I'm sweating it though, but that never ends. I'm sweating it.
Oh yeah, I've run some myself, and the one I'm running right now, I'm sweating it. So. But yeah,
Oh, you gotta
everybody
send me a
check it
link. You
out.
gotta send me a link to that. Why don't we know about that one?
I'll send you one. But everybody, make sure you check out his Kickstarter. Make sure you check him out on paperfilms.com, because there's a lot of cool stuff on there. It's not just the Kickstarter stuff on there. I was looking at it. There's all these cool CGC signed slabs that you can get from them, and the stuff is just fantastic. So check that out, and make sure you check us out online too at thecodexstation.com. You can meet all the team. You can get some merch for us too. But again, I want to say thank you for joining us. Nothing but luck for the current Kickstarter.
Thank you, buddy.
And until next time, we'll catch you by the spinner rack.
See ya.